Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Intel session on driving revenue for law firms with Alistair Marshall. For those of you who are new here, just a quick explainer of what Intel is. So Intel stands for Innovation, Networking, Technology, Education, and Leadership. And essentially, it's just a series of learning sessions put on by Practice Evolve that are designed to equip Australian law firms and legal professionals with innovative strategies for sustainable growth in an industry that we all know is ever evolving. Just a few quick housekeeping points before we get started. So there will be a quick dedicated Q&A session at the end of our conversation with Alistair. You are welcome to submit your questions throughout the Q&A button at the bottom of your screens, and then we'll save all of those for the end and make sure that Alistair gets a chance to answer all of them. Do stay on with us until the end to participate in a quick feedback poll. Taking a minute to provide your feedback is really valuable for us, because what that enables us to do is just make sure that these sessions get better and better for you each time. And finally, this session is being recorded, so keep an eye out on your inbox for an email from Practice Evolve in the next day or two with the link to the recording. Before we truly get stuck in, just a little bit of an explainer as to what to expect today. We are doing things a little bit differently. With that said, it is a Q&A with Alistair, a little bit more conversational because there is a lot to get through, really a lot of really good information. The way that I've structured the interview is based on the flow of his new book that is coming out in the next month or two. So Alistair will be able to talk a little bit more to that for those who are interested. And then also quite a few of you have submitted your questions upon registration. So we'll be addressing those as part of the flow. I do have to say I've been really lucky to get a little bit of a preview of Alistair's book, and there's so much good content in there. So this should be a very informative and valuable session, which I'm really looking forward to. And then finally, there will be a prize that Alistair is giving away at the end. So do make sure to stay on for more details as to what that is and how to enter. With that, a little bit of background in terms of how me and Alistair met. So earlier in the year, Alistair was hosting a conference called the LSAS conference, which was really, really interesting. He did the keynote and he ran the whole session. And then off the back of that, I thought he would be an excellent speaker to come on board to the Intel sessions. So Alistair, welcome. I think as a form of introduction, what's best here is for you to tell us a little bit about what it is that you do, how did you get involved working with professional services firms, and also what inspired you to write this book?
Thank you. So good afternoon, everybody. We decided to have a conversation rather than death by PowerPoint while you enjoy your lunch. But please have pen and paper to hand, because I think there'll be quite a few one-liners that you might choose to write down. So essentially, I help law firms and other professional services businesses to become easier to buy from. So quite often I hear it said that professional services aren't sold, they're bought. So you need to make yourself easier to buy from. So my background was actually in fast-moving consumer goods. You'll notice from my accent, I am from the UK. I've been in Australia for 11 years. And prior to doing that, I ran a similar consultancy business in the UK. So my background was selling beer and shampoo and other things. And then just about the time of the great GFC in 2009, I pivoted and decided to come out of Planet Corporate and do my own training business. And I went networking, and I actually put this in the forward for the book. And when I went networking, I met heaps of lawyers and accountants and bankers and IT professionals and people who couldn't tell me why they were any better than the next lawyer, law firm, accountancy practice, bank, IT professionals, engineers, etc. And thought, these are the people who need the assistance. So I took all the learnings I'd learned from a fast-moving consumer goods background, rewrote the content. And you need a bit of luck. Everybody needs a break in life. So someone said, if you want to get into law in the UK, you need to get in with the Royal Bank of Scotland, who at that time banked 40% of the market. So I was introduced to a guy called Steve Lewis, and he banked 1,500 law firms at that time. And he asked me to speak at a conference, and that's how I got started. And then it's a long story short, but they merged with lots of other banks. He went to other banks. So all of those bank relationship people were introducing me to their law firms. And then one day my wife woke up and said, we're going to the other side of the world. So I had to start again over here. And I've been doing it for 11 years here in Australia. And I've literally been in hundreds of law firms and helped thousands of lawyers to attract new clients and win more business.
Fantastic. And we're going to unpack all of that today. We've got quite a few questions to get through. So let's get started. One of the key sections of your book is on strategy. So I thought that would be a good point to start off with. Understanding the traits that form a successful law firm are quite important for anyone that's looking to improve its performance. So in your opinion, what are the key traits and strategies that make some law firms more successful than others?
Okay, lot to digest there. Lots of people reach out to me and they go, Alistair, we need more work or we need new clients. And I go, okay, that's tactics, but tactics are bolted to a strategy. Do you have a strategy? And if most firms are honest, they probably don't. And even if larger firms who would have been the ones who would have done in the past, and CEOs or managing partners would have been tasked with writing 3 or 5 year plans, that all went out of the window with COVID. So we ended up, in a completely different world post-COVID and technology advances and so on, and the human talent war. There were so many other things. So the first thing I have to get people to do is decide what strategy is. And to do that, you probably need to start by running some diagnostic tools to work out what got you to the place you are now, on the understanding that the strategies that got you to where you are today won't necessarily get you where you want to be tomorrow. So there are a number of areas you need to go and ask yourself about where you've been successful, why, where have you been less successful and why. And I'm big on the fact that 80% of law firms it's all human. So if law firms are 80% people and 20% everything else, it's very important you get the 80% people bit right. And I think one of the questions I've already seen is around how you attract and retain the best human talent. So I won't run ahead too far, but you need to have an understanding of strategy. And it's quite hard because strategy forces you to make decisions that most leaders don't want to make in terms of who do you want to appeal to. So being a full service law firm or a full service business at all is very hard to market these days, because nobody hires a generalist anymore. Everybody wants an expert. And if you go to a law firm website and they offer 20 different avenues of law, it's hard to be an expert in all 20. So I think there are a number of people on here who are marketing and business development managers within firms. I would really encourage you to try and maybe break up the year. So you might take out, certainly here in Australia, New Zealand, maybe leave out December, January, and for the other 10 months of the year, focus in months or by months on the type of work or where you're going to make your efforts. Otherwise, you dilute your whole message throughout the year. And I don't think that's very successful. So the first thing is absolutely working out who is the ideal client and why are they going to choose you rather than someone else, and how are you going to start a relationship with them. So I should have said at the start of this, I have huge empathy with people listening to this, because no one learns this in law school. No one teaches you this at university. So where are you expected to pick these things up? And usually it's by listening to someone who's older than you, who's been through the journey. But not everybody wishes to learn in that way anymore, which is another subject I think we're likely to come on to later about what law firms of the future may look like. So the strategy is really getting people in a room to agree on what success looks like, what the future looks like, what succession planning might look like, and what areas of the firm might want to focus on. So again, even taking things like demographics into place. So demographics are going to change hugely, certainly here in Australia over the next 10, 20 years. So the types of law that you might want to focus on might depend on that. So, people who focus on aged care, for example, will be in a good place. People who are focused on property, maybe less so, because I'm told by demographics people that over the next 5 or 10 years, the property sales and so on will actually go down because the way population things work. So there's quite a mix, but lots of things for people to consider.
Yeah.
And people shouldn't think that it's only big firms that need to do strategy. That's not true. Look, small law firms have huge opportunities to make inroads on big ones if they do this properly.
Well, that's how they grow.
Sure.
with the right strategy in place.
Oh, yes.
In your book, you do mention that there are 3 key questions that can significantly improve a firm's financial position. Can you talk a little bit about what they are?
Yeah, so the first question should be, under what circumstance or why do I need your legal product or service at all? Now, that might be obvious to you because you do that every day. But if you're trying to educate prospective clients or referrers, they might not understand that. So it's a really good exercise to sit in a dark room and don't come out until you've written down all the reasons why and all the circumstances that I might require your line of work. The second big question, which might be the $64 million question, is why should I choose you rather than a competing lawyer or law firm? And I spent hours in boardrooms on getting to the bottom of what this is. And the third one, which is undervalued, is why should I do it now rather than wait? And for all the litigation people on the line, that's really key about putting some sense of urgency into the messaging. Because often in litigation, the competition is not another lawyer or law firm, it's the client choosing inertia, just doing nothing and putting it off. So most of if you can imagine, I ask this regularly, and most managing partners or CEOs of law firms come back and say, okay, Alistair, the reason people come to our firm is value and price. And I laugh and I go, that's not true, is it? Because there's always someone in town who'll do it cheaper than you. So I get my big black pen out and draw a line through that one. And then they go, the quality of our staff is superior. And I go, okay, well, that's very good. I don't expect leaders of a firm to tell me their teams are poor. It's only happened once in 11 years, which was a firm in Melbourne who shall remain nameless, which came out after a few drinks in a conference. And the third one is the ubiquitous, our service is superior. And I go, prove it. And they go, well, we don't measure it, so we can't. And I go, well, I'll draw a line through that as well. So people need to work a bit harder on why people should go to your firm rather than someone else. But everyone has an answer when they do spend some time on it.
You just have to dig into it.
Yes, yeah. You need detail.
So a big question here, which is business development. What would you say is the most common perception of business development among the law firms that you do talk to? And then as a little bit of a follow-up to that, why is it critical for law firms to develop a business development culture in order to be successful?
Well, the reason why people on the line would be needing to listen is because A, the competition's better than it was. So I don't believe that if you do nothing, you stay where you are. You go backwards because there are people around you who are getting more savvy at this. And clients are getting more savvy in making choices. And they're actually less sticky than they used to be. They're more likely to move than they would have done in the past. There's lots of noise out there in the market. So BD culture, my issue and kind of the title of the session is most lawyers and law firms are over reliant on referrals or AdWords, which is dangerous. So in a business to business field, it's very referrals driven. In business to consumer law, it's often very AdWords or digitally driven. So you have to understand that usually activity drives revenue. And if you wait for the phone to ring, you'll be waiting a long time these days. You kind of got to educate people. But people shouldn't fear this. So business development is only relationship building. People have legal aches and pains, and you are there to assist them. So people shouldn't consider it salesy or desperate or cheesy or this isn't why I went to law school, Alistair. It's beneath me, below me, and I'm not going to try. You know, we're in the service industry. The clue's in the title, professional services. And in some ways, you're almost like a triage nurse. So people come with their legal aches and pains, and your bedside manner, how you deliver the service, is what they remember, and whether you're worthy of a referral or not. And when I'm running workshops, I often talk to people about my favorite 4-letter word beginning with F, which is the word feel. How you make people feel in life is massive, not just in a professional environment, but also in a social environment. And as a lawyer, people won't always remember what you say. They won't always remember what you did, but you'll always remember how your interactions with them made them feel. So if you make me just feel like a file number, that's not worthy of a referral. If you reach out to me once a year, when I need something, not good either. You need to keep that relationship going and be at the forefront of people's mind on a day that I have a legal need. And there are, it's often spoken to, I think, that there are kind of 4 levels of a legal service or perception. So people say, well, what's brand? Brand is really what people think about you when you're not in the room, right? So level 1, you might have people know you or have heard of you, that you can provide a product, a legal product in the market. You do conveyancing, or you do wills and estates, or you do commercial contracts, or whatever it is. And then you might get perceived, if you're good at service, you go from level 1 to level 2. If you can demonstrate a benefit in the overall business, you'll go up to level 3. And then the holy grail of professional services, becoming the trusted advisor, is level 4. But once you go in at any of those levels, it's hard to go up a notch unless you earn the right. So if you win a piece of work based on price and you're down at level 1, how do you get up to level 4? That's a hard journey. So I'd rather you started a journey with people by being perceived as experts, by going in at level 3 and 4. And that's possible, but you need to be doing things that other people won't. And if you want to be in the top 5% of lawyers and law firms in the country, frankly, you've got to be prepared to do what 95% of lawyers and law firms in the country are not prepared to do. So whilst a lot of the things I discuss are not difficult, they're not easy, because if there were, more people would be doing them. And often the pushback is time. But they often use that as an excuse because they've never been taught what to do. And I have real empathy with that. The other problem that many firms confuse is the difference between having a marketing problem, i.e. you can't get enough meetings with referrers or prospective clients, or you have a sales problem. And there you go, I've used the S word, okay? So in law, we wrap it up and we call it business development because we don't like the S word, but that's what it is. Right, so lots of lawyers and law firms were on 1217. So there'll be lawyers out now all over the CBDs of Australia having flat whites or a palming, but nothing will happen as a result because they've never been taught what to say when they get there. So they give people a history lesson of the firm in the hope that they buy something, but people don't buy the longevity of a law firm. So there's a miss. So people's conversion rates is usually fairly ordinary. And I have empathy with that because, like I say, they never get taught how to do it properly. So I don't know if that there's a long answer to the question, but I think we just about got there.
Well, a big part of what you're saying is business development culture is important, but to create that, you need good people in place to be able to do so. One of the things that you touched on earlier is recruitment, and that being a big issue for a lot of law firms consistently, year upon year, we are seeing that. So how would you say can law firms aim to attract good people, but then off the back of that, how do you make sure that they stay with you?
Well, there's a number of things of this. It's quite a multifaceted question, but over the last 2 years, when I've been talking at conferences, I've spent more time on this, talking about how you win the war for talent, than I have about win the war for clients. So there's a huge opportunity here, and small firms are actually beating the big firms for good talent because they do this well. So I think there's a complacency in the larger firms, which allows the smaller firms to really make some strides here. So I refer to, we're in the world of DEB. So who is Deb? Deb is the digitally empowered buyer, and Deb does her due diligence on a firm or an individual before she makes a buying decision. So I've got an example. I won't name the names of the firms, but two similar firms, one large, one small, advertise for a very similar job at a similar level with the same level of pay. And the big firm got about 3 applications and the small firm got 30. All right. So why is that possible? How does that happen? So one of the big differentiators is website. Right. So people will go to your website before they ever take the interview. Okay. So you have to deliver on the website. So you have to communicate who you are, what you do, the types of clients you work with, what culture might look like, and share some information. It should be a free information portal. You probably should have a dedicated careers page on there. You should probably have some interviews with current members of staff eulogizing about what the culture in the training platform's like. You know, you've got so much to go and talk about on on the website that most firms don't put up there. It's very rare to see what types of industry sectors people specialize in, what type of clients you work with. On exit interviews from law firms, half the people blame culture and half the people blame they were bored with the type of work they were doing. So that should come across. This is the type of work you'd be expected to do for these types of clients. And some firms who are listening to this today will have a better opportunity to sell that message than others just by the nature of work they do and who they do it for. And training's massive. What does the induction thing look like? What does the pathway to partnership look like? Another big, and you'll expect me to say this, a big differentiator, especially in lateral hires, is the anxiety around hitting the ground to hit your billable targets. So if you've got two firms offering similar roles at similar money, and in one interview, someone tells you, this is our vision for our practice, this is where we want to be in 3 years' time, this is where we want you to be in a year's time, this is how the induction program will look. We'll also give you access to business development and marketing help, which will help you to make sure you hit the ground running and attract clients and do all the right things there. That's a good message, rather than if you join this firm, we'll give you a desk and mobile phone, knock yourselves out, try and bring in as much of your existing client base as you can. Too many people take that easy option. They don't go and do the good messaging. And all the power base has shifted. So it used to be that the firms had the power rather than the candidates, but that's not the case now. If a candidate's with you, they're probably interviewing somewhere else, and you've got to really sell yourselves on vision for the firm, the interest in work, the types of clients, the types of staff, the colleagues, all that. There's so much to talk about culture-wise. It's more than beanbags in the breakout room. You know, we've got firms offering 4-day weeks. We've got people, you know, offering proper incentives for introducing certain types of work or clients. We've got firms offering domestic cleaning to make sure that people who are busy don't have to worry about what's going on back at home. There's a whole different ball game out there now than what I saw when I came into the law 15 years ago. It's really advanced.
It's interesting that you don't mention remuneration as a perk anymore, and that's kind of reflective of the candidate pool at the moment. People are less and less interested in that and more interested.
Well, I don't know how true that is, Irina. I still think that lawyers are quite competitive, and I do think remuneration plays its place. But now you've got a number of firms paying similar amounts for the roles, so it goes beyond that. And I think to under 35s, they're expecting different things, and they're more into the Simon Sinek and the why. Why does your firm exist beyond making profit? But I think probably older people, I'm at 57, and if I went and interviewed most 57-year-old partners in a law firm, I think remuneration would still be up there as a lifestyle choice. That's why they choose to go there. But certainly younger people now are looking for something beyond that.
Yeah. Right. Well, we talked about business development. We talked about culture a little bit. Let's move on to marketing and lead generation. There is a section in your book that one of the things you talk about is a profit model, which you see all successful law firms adopt. Yeah. Can you explain what that profit model is?
Well, I don't know if anyone on the line's got an MBA or if anyone on the line aspires to have an MBA, but I've pinched this from an MBA course, really. So an MBA course would take 2 or 3 years of your life. I think the best place to do one in Australia, if you're in New South Wales, it's probably UNSW. I think Melbourne Business School is probably the highest rated. There's a guy there called Mark Ritson, who I recommend people follow on social media. He's hilarious. He swears a lot, but he's very good. And it takes $80,000. So the condensing of 2 or 3 years learning on that course is that your financials are based on only 2 things, which is operational competence times marketing. All right. So in layman's terms, that's how good you are at what you do, multiplied by how good you are at telling people about how good you are at what you do. And most lawyers are deficient in that second discipline. So when I go in a boardroom and I ask equity partners, where do you think your financial score is on a scale of 1 to 10 for financial return? So we're talking about cash in bank, WIP, equity partner profit, margin, all that kind of thing. Most people sit on the fence and say 6 or 7 out of 10 versus potential. And then go and ask them, how good are you at delivering a legal service, right? They come out like silver gorillas beating the chest. Oh, we're fantastic at this. We're 9 or 10 out of 10. And I go, well, if this model works, then that means your marketing or BD score is probably a 4 or 5 at best. So if you spend all your CPD and CLE hours trying to get better as a black and white law, that won't necessarily give you any more financial reward. But if you get better at telling potential clients or referrers about how good you are at what you do, that's where you'll see a bigger financial return. So how do I know this? Because I meet really competent lawyers who struggle to financially get the practice they deserve. And conversely, I meet really ordinary practitioners who drive supercars. Right? So there's something amiss. It's not, you get lied to at law school. They tell you if you do good work for good clients, it's enough to sustain a practice. But in the modern world, I'm not sure that's true anymore. There are people out there who are really good at this marketing and BD. And if you don't get on board, you'll have a job, but you'll struggle to have a career.
Mm-hmm. This is actually the next question has come through from one of the attendees. So if you're talking about financial performance of a law firm is operational competence times marketing, should law firms focus more on building their overall brand or focus on personal branding for individual team members?
Well, that depends on the line of law you're in. My short answer to that is both, because there are two brands. There's the umbrella brand of the firm, but people still buy lawyers, not just law firms. So it's down to the individual to look after their own individual brand. And one of the big differences between winning and losing is accountability. And it's a lot easier to make an individual accountable rather than the firm accountable. And there'll be some marketing and BD managers on here now scratching themselves going, yeah, that's the problem, making people accountable. That's a huge difference between winning and losing and the discipline. So I would try and promote both. And they should go hand in hand, but we still go to law firms where they're very siloed and it's my client rather than the firm's client, and I'm not sharing or cross-selling with my colleagues. And there are things that you can do to assist in that. But if you only measure billable hours, then there's a lack of incentive for people to go out and do certain BD activities. So the activity drives revenue, as I said before. So I'd be measuring outputs. So, how many articles have you written? How many webinars have we been a guest and spoke on? There's so many different things that people can do now. I talk about having 20 routes to market to generate leads, which is a mixture between using the written word, the spoken word, and networking both on and offline. Social media is huge, particularly in the business to consumer space. And, video is massive, but I still go to law firms who've never made a video. Mobile traffic is vast. Probably half the hits on a website come on a mobile device. People don't take advantage of it. People should have YouTube channels. People should have LinkedIn profiles that they're active on. And these things don't cost money. Most of the things that work don't actually cost cash. They cost time. So therefore, there's a opportunity cost, but not a real cash cost in most instances.
Yeah. What I would interpret that as a lot of firms, what they should be doing is investing in a branding strategy for the firm where promoting the team members is a big part of that strategy. But it is up to the individual to make sure that they take ownership of their personal brand and go and do some activity that will build on that.
Yeah. So there might be some people who recognize this. 97% of law firms in Australia and New Zealand have a red or blue logo. All right, so people get obsessed about logo and colors and head fonts. It's not the difference between winning and losing people. It just isn't. So you can take your logo. I've seen some larger firms spend 100 grand on a rebrand, logos, names, and I'm really underwhelmed by what results that gets. It probably has an internal boost for a little while that people think that the firm's investing in them, but I'm not sure an external client really cares. But the color of your font is on the website. So you have to do the things that matter, and it's relationship build. It's not shiny things. So people get hung up on doing the wrong things sometimes.
Before we move on to sales and how do you actually close the leads, can we touch on AdWords? What's your opinion on AdWords? Because I know you work with a lot of firms that either spend quite a lot on AdWords and other firms that spend nothing, different results. Let's talk about that.
So my experience is that AdWords in a business to consumer space can be hugely profitable. But you have to find the right agency to be doing it for you, or even better, find someone in-house to be doing it for you. So I will share that I worked with a business to consumer firm in Queensland whose AdWords budget last year was in excess of $800,000, which has got them millions and millions of work. So it's taken them a few years to get to that point. Obviously, they didn't start off with a budget that size, but this is a firm that's got a headcount of around 30 or 40. You know, this isn't a massive national firm, but they've found niches, and niches make riches, as they say, and they just own the space, and they've worked out how to use AdWords really well. Conversely, AdWords doesn't have a great record in business to business situations. Investments that work better there tend to be things like sponsored LinkedIn, sponsored Facebook. I've worked with firms in like employment law and so on who've had really good results with that. But AdWords, be careful. And I think we've got a couple of criminal firms on the line today. Very expensive AdWords in criminal law. It's almost a cost of doing business in criminal law that there's an expectation to do it. But again, be very careful. Too many times people send AdWords traffic to the homepage of the website. But most law firm websites are not set up to convert traffic of people who are ready to buy. So please understand, right? So AdWords are there for the 3% of the market that are ready to buy today. So it's like criminal. So criminal people, there's a charge, there's an incident, I need a lawyer today, right? But in business to business, usually there's not that level of urgency, so it doesn't work as well. So it works really well for family law, that there's an incident on a Friday night, someone's had too much to drink, there's a big argument, let's go online over the weekend, which takes to me another thing on service. Law firm websites and offices are only open usually 8:30 to 5:30 Monday to Friday. Lots of consumer law happens outside those office hours. So in the modern world, you need to have, you know, either a bot on there, but something to gather data so you can speak to people on a Monday morning first thing. Too many websites are shut down and don't do that. So lots of things around service, but I think I'm going off at a tangent here. The question was around AdWords. Yes, it can work brilliantly, but don't do it yourself. Find an expert to do it for you.
Yeah, it's a whole different beast of its own.
Yeah.
I would know being in marketing.
Yeah, totally.
So we talked about lead gen. Let's assume we ran an amazing AdWords campaign, got loads of leads in. It takes a bit of a strategic approach to convert those into actual clients. So the next few questions are a bit more practical, I would say. First of all, the new normal is the virtual meetings. So that has changed the way law firms interact with potential clients. Do you have some strategies that can help convert virtual meetings into more billable work?
Don't talk too much. To be fair, people are used to Zoom and Teams now. So I could make a flippant remark and say there's no difference, right? So the whole way I would run an engagement meeting, whether it was a first time with a client in an office in person or whether it was via Zoom, actually wouldn't be different. Excuse me. What untrained people do is they talk too much. It's not a two-way conversation, and they tell the person in the engagement meeting everything there is to know about them and the firm, and that's not necessary. Much better to ask good questions. So people say to me, oh, well, Alistair, you're in BD, you must be good at this, you've got the gift of the gab, which is an English phrase. And I say, well, I can talk and I hold my own, but it's because I ask better questions, I get better answers. And engagement meetings, and I have my own, I'm just looking around here to wave at it. If I have an engagement meeting, I have that in front of me, which is not a script, but there's a whole load of information there that I need if I'm going to bring people value, and I can't guess what value is. I have to ask them.
Yeah.
So that's what stops me forgetting what I need, what information I need to find. It also subconsciously demonstrates to whoever I'm talking to that I'm actively listening, and I write the answers down so I don't forget. Right. So you've got to be talking to people about, what the problem is, what a good outcome might look like for them. Are they considering other firms? Have they got an expectation around budget and what it's going to cost? A whole different load of questions you can talk to there. And most people go, we're Marshall and Marshall. We've been around 200 years. We've got 4 partners in 3 offices, and like no one cares, right? Talk to me about my problem, which is why you get issues in engagement meetings. The other thing around engagement issues, I'm big to make sure you've got money in trust accounts. And I'm big to, I think that we've had some questions in about pricing. I'm also want people to be transparent on pricing, because I don't want you to get down the line and end up falling out and having to make a write-off. So people should absolutely know what their expectation is around their financial commitment before we get going.
This is actually an opportune moment to ask this question. So you talk both about value and you just mentioned pricing.
Yep.
Value-based pricing, for those, a lot of firms are considering it or either doing it. For those who are considering but don't know how to make the transition, any tips on how to make that pivot?
Well, I've been doing law now for 15 years. And in that time, I've been hearing about the death of the billable hour. But let me tell you, it's like a cockroach in a nuclear winter. It's just not going to die. Okay. And there are clients who like the transparency of the billable hour. And so ultimately, you should do what the client wants.
Yeah.
My question is, most lawyers don't have the conversation with their existing clients on are they happy with the way that the firm bills you and delivers value. You never really have that conversation that well. So again, I'm going to wave another piece of paper at people. They are 16 different ways you can charge for your legal work. Right, so it doesn't have to be done by billable hours. So I can just read some of blended rates, tiered rates, daily rates, secondment rates, part-time in-house counsel, retainers, volume discount, rebates, fixed fees, cap fees, project fees, contingency fees, hybrid fees, success fees, profit shares, value adjusted billing. Now that's the ultimate goal, value adjusted billing, where you say to a client, I think this is going to cost 20 grand. You get to the end and you go, was it worth 20 grand? And they go, well, I'm not sure about that. Actually, it was only worth 18. You go, okay, we'll take 18. You've got to have some confidence to do that. But most law firms actually undersell price. That's my opinion. If you go and talk to lawyers and law firms and say, how many clients have you lost on price this year? Or how many times does a client say you're too expensive? Not that often. And that's because in all the research, I think it's 9% of legal buyers, price is a big thing. So for 91% of the people you'll ever talk to, it's not a reason why they're going to choose you. Right. Yeah. So there's many other ways to cut it. And what you certainly should do is have the conversation with your larger clients and make sure they're happy with the way that it's done now. Because if they're getting attacked by other lawyers or law firms to try and attract them to come over, they're likely to attack on price first. So at least if you've had that open and transparent conversation about how you deliver value to clients, they're usually going to go, no, I'm happy, thanks very much. So business development starts as a defensive measure by protecting and ring fencing the relationships you already enjoy before you actually go out trying to build new ones. And that's one good way of doing it. Well, but certainly at this time of year, sorry, one.
No, go on. Go on.
Well, I was just going to say, given that we're in the month of July and a financial year end here in Australia, this is absolutely the perfect time to go and do client review meetings with your top clients and ask all the questions around, are we delivering value? How could we improve the service? Do we have relationships with all the right people in the organization? What are your top 3 KPIs for the next year and how can we help you achieve them? All these types of things. And one of the biggest opportunities it allows for is that in the title of this, we talked about don't rely on referrals. The problems with the referrals in law firms is that you don't ask for them. Usually if I'm sat in a room with 10 lawyers and I go, okay, tell me when's the last time anyone in the room asked a client for a referral, it goes pretty quiet. People stare at the shoes. And that's often because the best trigger moment to ever ask for a referral is when someone's just scored you a really positive score on a client feedback survey form. And again, most law firms in Australia don't do them or don't do them very well. But, as soon as a client's given you a 9 or a 10, that's the time to ask them, who else do you know who'd benefit from this level of service?
Well,
but if you don't do that, you miss.
This leads me perfectly onto the next question is, how do you ask for that referral? Because a lot of people hesitate to do so because they think it sells, it's a bit cringy, they don't want to put themselves out there. Do you have a strategy for that? How do you make it more natural?
Well, that's certainly the first one. The second one is understand what a good referral looks like. And it should also be specific. You'll do far better asking for referrals by name. Now, this is, again, I'm huge on people having either industry sector knowledge or even in business to consumer work, having certain things that you specialize in and building an ecosystem around the perfect client where you'll get referrals from. So, I will ask things where I'll say, the trigger moment is key. I also ask people if they need time, right? So I'll ask for someone by name, or I'll say, can you refer me to another person specifically? Big, nice phrase to start with. I need your help. If you say to someone with a smile on your face, I need your help, right? It's a really, not confrontational.
Yeah.
And most people in the human in them will go, okay, Alistair needs my help. Okay, how can I help? So I'm trying to get in with Arena at Practice Evolve, and I see you connected with her on LinkedIn, or I noticed she came to your last thing, or, we've been to an event or whatever. How well do you know her? Is there any way you could, talk to her about what we do? But usually there's a conversational way. It doesn't have to be salesy ever. And if you give people the valve of, if you can give that some thought, I'll give you a shout next week and see if you can come up with a name. It just takes the pressure off without being salesy. But if you demonstrate that you're an expert in a field, people will be more confident of referring you because it'll actually make their personal brand look good.
Yeah.
But again, the ecosystem is massive. So I think you're probably familiar now because you met a lot of my network at that conference that we ran with the bank in April. So I have, legal firms is my thing. And as a result, I meet every month, the last Thursday of the month. I have lunch with the head of professional services at Macquarie Bank, the head of audit at Grant Thornton, who audits all their professional service firms, and the head of growth at Lockton Insurance Brokers, who specialised historically in all their professional services firms. So the four of us are all hunting law firms. None of us compete. We all know we do good things and we're good for each other's brand because we all stand in law firms where people go, the bank hasn't given me financial backing I was hoping for, or they won't give me the working capital I was hoping for. Can you recommend? Or they'll say, our insurance premiums around cyber risk have gone through the roof. Can you recommend somebody? Or our auditor's not giving us value. Can you come up with someone else? So those things, I get asked those questions all the time. I get asked, Alistair, can you recommend a practice management system? Oh, gee, I wonder who I might go to. Right. So these things happen. So if you build an ecosystem of people who you can get referrals from around your perfect client, that's huge. So again, whilst it's counterintuitive, you might think you want to do law for everybody, but the narrower you are, the easier it becomes to help. So even going back to the UK, I had personal injury lawyers. There was two in particular I remember. One is, bear in mind that I used to sell shampoo for a living, right? So I had a big connection with the hair and beauty industry. And there was one guy, and all he did was injuries to ladies who'd had their scalp burnt whilst having hair dyes put on. That was all he did, right? But there was only one in the whole UK. So if you're a personal injury lawyer, you're competing against every other personal injury lawyer in the country. If you specialize in people who've been injured in a certain way, and there was another one who just did needle stick injuries, right? I mean, you'd think the market's not big enough, but have a look. Because if you're in a market of one and you are the go-to person in Australia for that type of injury or something, you'll be busy. So it's not about appealing to that many people. It's about appealing to this many people, and they're easier to find once you know what they look like.
Yeah,
Big
absolutely. Which
difference.
ties in really well with personal branding and building that network. Because you in itself are a brand within a law firm. So if you can build your own referral network, that means more business for you, more business for the firm.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm conscious of time as well. I do have one more question. So for everyone that's listening right now, if you have any questions for Alistair, please submit them right now. Alistair, final question to you around cross-selling. So can be a significant boost to revenue, but requires a little bit of strategic planning. What are some tips for maximizing cross-selling opportunities within a firm?
Okay, so there's lots of reasons why it doesn't happen. Some of it is because law firms don't financially compensate people in the right way, and so they don't give origination credits. Although the main reason why it doesn't happen in law firms is because it's who owns the client. Is it the lawyer or the firm? Or when you get lateral hires in, people are like, well, I might not refer Alistair because he's new and I don't know if he's good or not, and he might not deliver service to my client as well as I do it, and therefore I'm not going to introduce him. So number of factors there. So the first thing is you need to have internal networking sessions where lawyers talk to other lawyers in the firm and literally go around a table and say, these are the types of issues that my clients have. This is how we deal with them. This is the results we deliver to them. Here's my top 10 clients in the firm. Right now, I go to firms where the people have been working together for years and they've no idea who the firm's top clients are because it's never shared, which goes back to culture. Because any firm leaders online, if you want to grow culture in your firm, you need to share more information with the people in the teams. But often that will happen. So you go around the table and you go, okay, my top 10 clients are these types of people. These are the problems they have. This is how we solve them. This is how I've worked with them before. And that's how you build confidence. And people go, I've actually got a client who's got that problem. I'll refer you this to you. So it kind of starts off, you need to find an opportunity grid. So I know lawyers love a spreadsheet. So if you do a spreadsheet with all the clients down the left, and on the top, you put all the types of law that you can do for them, and you put a tick in a box. So most law firms deliver 1.7 to 2.7 services per client, right? But most law firm websites I go on, they speak of 6, 8, 10, 12, 20 services. So you'll soon see where the opportunities are to cross-sell, and I'd rather call it cross-service, right? So again, if you have a review meeting with a client and you say, what budgets do you have for other areas of law? They'll tell you. And often clients don't use you because they've just pigeonholed you. You only do property law for us, or that type of thing. You do employment law for us, or we didn't know you did other things. That's not the client's fault. It's your fault because you've not educated them over time. Which goes back to all the the marketing opportunities you have with newsletters and emails and all the other things available to you. Does that help? That's the question.
Yeah, I think so. Well, the answer is for me. That's the end of our official interview session. We do have quite a few really good questions that have come through, but what I might do before that is, do you want to tell everyone about the prize and what they can?
Oh, yes. So a prize, when I do these things, I always like to offer a prize as a show of goodwill to start a relationship. So I talked earlier about diagnostic tools. So I do a diagnostic session, takes about up to an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. Do it with the partners of the executive team at your firm. So if you actually go to my website, at the bottom of the pages, there's an opportunity to fill one of these diagnostic tools in on your own. So it talks about the top 20 business development and marketing challenges I see in professional services firms. And you have to basically say true or false, yes or no, honesty. But if I run that as a Zoom session in your next partners meeting next month, you'll get some real value because I'll share a lot of the learnings and talk through each of the answers like we're talking through now. So if that's appealing to you, put your hat in the ring and Mrs. Marshall will pick a winner and we'll let you know over the next few days who that is.
So I've actually launched a little poll, which should be on all of the screens right now. Anyone that's interested, just click yes, no. Well, yes. And then we will announce the winner in the next few days. So keep an eye out for that announcement. But I'll give a few minutes for everyone to enter the poll. And let's move on to the next question. There's a really good one here for you, Alistair. How do you merge several brands together? With a merger, how do you absorb a brand without losing its clients?
Wow. Okay. Well, there's a lot to unpack there. Again, cultural fit is huge and service is just massive, right? So there are people who make huge amounts of money going into law firms talking about communication and change management. So usually you have to sell to both teams when you put two businesses together. Usually the focus is all internal for the first 12 to 24 months. People start looking internally at their own navel rather than externally at clients. And usually most firms struggle, frankly, in the first 12 to 24 months because everything's about politics and am I going to get a job and is that person better than me? And there's fear and anxiety. So you have to have open meetings. First of all, you would have to tell both teams and educate them on why the two firms are being brought together. So 1 + 1 has to equal 3. Otherwise, there's no point putting the firm together. Now, I have to be honest, and people are not naive. Most mergers and acquisitions are an acquisition, not a merger. Right? And we'll see a lot of those over the coming times. I think we're about to go through some tough times here in Australia, and there will be some acquisitions there. And it could either be because people my age are looking to exit, but it's the firm's not that profitable, or they don't have a succession plan, so they get acquired. That's usually the main way I think that firms are going to get put together. So we have to educate. We have to then go back to have a strategy session on what do we want the new firm to look like, because it could well be that the two firms come together, but there's actually there might be parts of the law that you're offering that you want to stop offering because it's not part of the future. The thing is, most firms grow up and have an organogram based on who's there today. But if you started the firm from scratch on Monday, the organogram would look different because the organogram's been built around the people who started it 30 years ago. So it offers things and has service offerings that, if you were being honest and surgical, don't actually make that much cash. So, you might add on and say, okay, this is why we need to put this firm together, because at the moment we have a business to business thing, but all the people in these high net worth firms who are partners in accountancy practices they get divorced. So we need to put a family arm on, and then we need to bolt on estate planning. And, so there are lots of opportunities. So you really need to go back and do that strategy session about what it needs to look like, but communication internally with staff and externally with clients, so you keep them absolutely up to date with what's going on. And then it's a handover of relationships. So not all relationships are equal. Usually 20% of the clients produce 80% of the profit. So those people need to be wrapped in cotton wool. So you need to have, take out the new person and meet them in person. And you need to book time and make time for that to happen. Otherwise, there's a real red flag here that says they'll start looking somewhere else for an opportunity to move, and you don't want that to happen. So absolutely sell the dream of why it's a better firm now than it was yesterday to both internal and external people. Big communication challenge.
Yeah. I think having that buy-in internally then is communicated outwards, because if your people believe in the future of the business, then they're much more likely to convey that in the conversations that they're having with new clients or existing clients.
But it has to look better in service. Clients get anxious because they think, oh, what'll happen now is the price will go up. And, it may well be that that's the right thing. The price should go up. And anyone who's out there listening to this, if you ask the 200 plus managing partners I've worked with in the past, what was the benefit of having Alistair in, it would be we put our prices up and we were confident enough to do it because we could now sell why we were experts rather than generalists. So it's not that you should shy away from that, because if you put your price up, it fuels growth because it gives you cash that you can reinvest back in the business to grow with things like the right practice management system, the right website, the right staff, all those things that cost money. So if you've got extra profit, it's a good thing to have. I should also say one final thing actually before I move on, but I'm quite passionate about this. I see too many firms whose strategy is just kind of to survive rather than win, which is a huge miss. Great book. A guy called A.G. Lafley, who used to be the CEO of Procter & Gamble, he wrote a book on strategies to win. I recommend everybody go and read it. It's a really valuable book on how to market something to a mass market as a luxury product. It's a really good thing to read. And it was written in the 70s, I think, about Oil of Ulay. There's a brand from the past, but it's really clever about how they do it and offers some good learnings. Because the future is here. We haven't really talked about what a future firm might look like, but it's going to change, people. So wow, where do we even start? You know, think of the change that's happened in the last 4 years compared to the last 200 years, right? There's a lot. So on technology, on people, on culture, on work from home, that's only going to get, you know, we're living in the future now. It's already changing. If you're thinking about it now, it's too late. One thing I would say on AI and its uses, if you don't have a dedicated meeting internally about AI at least once a month, you're missing out. You're already behind the game. So the big firms are already on it, but that doesn't mean a small 2 or 3 partner firm in the country can't do it. It has its benefits, but if you're not sitting and talking about it for at least an hour a month and, you know, looking at ways how it could assist you, you absolutely should.
That does seem to be the hot topic around everyone's dinner table these days.
Yeah, it is. But, you know, even, you know, if you make your money making contracts, will that even be a thing in 10 years' time?
I am very conscious of time, Alistair. There's some really good questions coming in. I would say maybe we have time for one more question. Anyone else who we didn't get a chance to address, I do really encourage you to just reach out to Alistair directly. I'm sure you're well up for a chat.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
I'll send those details out in an email with the recording to this as well. Also, for anyone that didn't get a chance to respond to the prize draw poll, there will be another opportunity in the email as well. So keep an eye out. If you haven't entered, but you would like to enter, there's going to be another opportunity tomorrow for you to do so. One final question for you, Alistair. In response to your comment that clients usually now want specialists rather than generalists, how do you reconcile that with achieving trusted advisor status when being that for your clients usually involves helping your clients across several different practice areas?
Okay, so I take that as a thought leadership challenge. So you might have a client that's done a conveyancing transaction for years with you. They might have had a slip, trip and a fall. They might have got divorced, right? So there's a number of different legal challenges here. So you need to keep at the forefront of their mind by giving them thought leadership pieces on a number of topics. Now, most law firms write a generic newsletter, which might have far too many topics in, whereas you'd be much better sending people information or having downloads off your website that are very specific to specific topics. And that's how you would either pitch one particular partner or solicitor in the firm as a specialist in that topic, and they can author articles or make videos or do webinars or do podcasts or, you know, make YouTube videos, whatever it is. There's a whole host of options available, but that's how I do it. So the thought leadership piece is huge on how you can do specific things for specific types of clients in specific circumstances.
We've got 3 minutes left. So what I might do, actually, I mentioned at the start a feedback poll. I'll launch that for anyone that's still on the line, and I'll ask you one final question, Alistair. So this one is from Melanie. Melanie wants to know, for personal services firms, specifically family and criminal law, and we're talking about AdWords, does that mean spending AdWords on Facebook and Instagram advertising to promote the YouTube channel? Which tools the marketing goals you have created? Which holds the marketing goal you created? So I'm getting here, so most of the great content is on YouTube. So how would you promote that with AdWords?
Okay, so I go back to, don't necessarily send people to the landing page of a website. So if you run an AdWord campaign, or whether you do a sponsored LinkedIn or Facebook campaign, you should have a specific dedicated landing page, not the main website, that you send people to. And what you really want to try and, like, any fool can buy traffic, right? I can spend $1 million on AdWords today, just pound traffic to the website. But if it's not set up to get the email details of the visitor, it's pointless, right? So you have to offer something of value in exchange for my email address. That's what you need to do. So you need signature pieces of content, which could be a video on your YouTube page, which you put to access people on the landing page. Give me your name and your email address, access the video, which will speak specifically to your challenge. It could be that. It could be that you give it away for free, and that's part of a funnel process where you give them something else. But ultimately, you can't reach out to them if you don't know who they are. So you need to offer something of value where people put the hand up and go, yes, I want to learn more, please. So you have to decide what that is. So I used to offer an ebook, and I had over 700 downloads of the ebook. So that was good. They all went into the database. I've now, as I say, just changed that to a diagnostic tool. It's only 10 days in, so it's too early to say whether that's the right thing. But certainly AdWords and videos go well together.
Yeah. From a marketing perspective, it is a balance, because obviously you want to offer some value for free. And then, so that could be something like regular blog articles, you're just establishing the thought leadership piece, and then anything that's a little bit more substantial, you want to put that behind a bit of a form, gated content. And
well, I like the phrase repurposing.
Repurposing.
So you can use the same piece of content several times over by putting it in different places at different times.
And different formats, because everyone digests content differently. So whilst I might prefer to read through an article, someone else would prefer a 1-minute video that just summarizes the key point. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely that.
Alistair, thank you so much. I really enjoyed our conversation. I hope you did too.
It flowed by. So when it flies by, that's usually a good sign.
Well, we had 30 minutes allocated for it, and we're well within the hour. So I'm very sure that everyone that's attended the session got a lot of value out of it. Before I let you go, I just wanted to thank you, because it is through you, and just talking back to referrals, that you put me in touch with a lady called Simone Herbert-Lowe. And she is actually going to be doing a session with us on the 15th. So she's a cyber resilience expert, has a lot of experience within the industry, over 30 years plus, and I'm very much looking forward to chatting to her. So thank you for connecting the two of us.
All good. Simone's excellent at that topic. You'll enjoy it.
Simone's fantastic and very personable as well. So I do hope anyone that stayed on, that you register for that session as well. Look out for that email with the recording. Will be another opportunity to enter the prize draw, and as I mentioned, the winner will be announced in the next few days, so look out for that. And again, Alistair, once your book is officially out, I'm
hoping Amazon should be delivering my first copy a week tomorrow, and then there might be a final few changes, but it should be available in the middle of next month.
I look forward to getting the hard copy of that. As I said, loads of good stuff in there and easy to understand. So thank you for that. When you say practical and digestible, it really is.
Good.
Thank you, Alistair.
Pleasure. Thank you. See you now.
Everyone for
Bye-bye.